Welcome into the first NFL Futures Report of the 2023-2024 NFL season. This is something that is going to be a regular thing, especially as we get into the NFL season. But even at certain points leading up to it, there will be reasons for us to discuss futures. So here's the thing. If you are here and all you want is some futures that you can bet right now, look down below at the timestamps, and I will have in there when I get to those timestamps. Before you skip down to that, if that's you, I'll also tell you before that, I'm going to be going through a variety of tools and angles and kind of showing you all the data and information that's leading me to the bets that I'm going to share today. But part of the reason that I'm doing that as well is last year, NFL futures were the most lucrative thing that I bet on. I was up, 45.78 units with a 47.2% ROI. Now, let me say right up front, I am not saying that exactly will happen again. I do believe that futures markets are more beatable, but I believe that they're more beatable, especially when you're willing to have the discipline and consistency to build a futures portfolio. Just going in and making a few futures bets is fun, and I still think the markets are softer. It's not a bad idea, even if you just want to go place 2, 3, 4 bets. But I think there's a big opportunity here. In sports betting now, everything's so sharp and people are always looking for edges, and there are people who are really good at a variety of different things. If you work hard, you can find those people on Twitter. Other places, I follow a lot of those people and I tail them on some things, or certainly listen to their information on a variety of things. Do shows with some of them, whatever. But it can be hard to find angles in sports betting that are still beatable. I think building a futures portfolio is one of the ways that you can still do that. I'm going to be doing a video here in the next week or two that's going to be on Substack, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, that's going to explain what it means to build a futures portfolio, what the angles are that go into that. And here's the short version of it is to do it well. I think it takes a shitload of work. And I think it's fun, but there's just so many things that you have to consider in how you build it. It's sort of like how you build a stock portfolio, I guess, although I think there might be more ways that you're trying to hedge and middle and do a variety of things, get the timing right on when you make entries on certain bets. So I'm going to be putting in that work. I'm going to be betting a lot of futures. I've already started. I'm going to share some of that today because I think I can make money again doing it this year. That's my belief. Again, I know there's nothing guaranteed in sports betting, and I don't ever want you to hear me say anything different. If you are interested in doing that same thing, then I would encourage you to go subscribe on Substack. You can go to bigtastysports.substack.com and you can sign up for a free subscription, which is great. And I will be posting content and some things to give you some direction there. But also there is a paid subscription. It's $7 a month. So hopefully pretty cheap. You can pay for a whole year. I think it's $45 for the whole year. Also, right now, if you go to @bigtastysports.com and look at the pinned tweet, there is a link to that Substack where you can get 25% off for the whole first year. So we're talking about a very little amount of money. But honestly, I'm just trying to get people who are really in and recoup a little bit with all the work that goes into creating a good futures portfolio. So if you want to come along for that ride this year, and again, I mean, you can cancel this stuff at any time, right? And we're not talking about big amounts of money. So hopefully that doesn't preclude anybody from jumping in who wants to, but it's right there on the screen. If you were watching the video, bigtastysports.substack.com. If you sign up for that, just know that you're going to be getting in-depth videos every week, some written breakdowns. You're also going to get all the tools that I use updated with my information. And there's a couple different ways that you could approach this. Number one, you could just take what I'm saying and say, hey, sounds good to me. I'm going to tail you and make the same bets you're making. Cool. Also, if you're interested, though, I'm going to be going through these tools in detail. I'm going to be talking about strategy for building a portfolio. So if you actually want to get better at building an NFL futures portfolio, I think you're going to enjoy the content that's going to be there to help you figure out how to do that, you know, with the tools that I provide, or even just on your own at some point. You'll get way better than me. Maybe that's awesome. I hope you do. So if any of that sounds interesting, go sign up, and would love to have you along for that ride this year. All right, with all that introduction said, we are going to jump into talking about the futures as they stand right now. Schedules have not been released yet. That's a big deal. The schedule does make a big difference to me in terms of a lot of the futures bets that I would want to make, because again, timing is a big deal, and I'm not going to go too deep into that now, but you can probably figure out why the schedule would matter for timing on futures bets. So that's something that makes a big difference. However, I do think that there are some things right now that we can look at that can lead us to some good futures bets. So I'm sharing my screen here. You can't see me. Well, I don't know if you can see me. I can't see me anymore. But I want to walk through this. I'm not going to go into depth on every spreadsheet, but I want you to understand where this stuff is coming from. So the first thing that I do is I rank all 32 teams, and then I put them into tiers. And that's what I use to populate this sheet right here, which gives me the strength of schedule for all 32 teams, because the strength of schedule is going to come into play for me. Just to give you an example, I'm going to flip over to this other sheet here. This is division by division, and I'm going to walk through some more of this later. But if you're following along right now, you can see this column right here, column E, is strength of schedule. And the closer it is to 100, the harder the schedule is. Well, where does this make a difference? Let's go to the NFC North. Yes, I'm a Vikings fan, but this is a good example. I have Minnesota's strength of schedule at 81 and Chicago's at 64. So do I think Minnesota or Chicago is better? Well, I would go with Minnesota right now. However, that's a significant discrepancy in terms of strength of schedule. So that's going to come into play in what I think the records end up being and what I think their percentage chances are of winning the division, say, or things like that. So this strength of schedule makes a big difference. And this is one of the tools that I'll be walking through, not just this spreadsheet that I'm showing on the screen right now, but also how I populate it and how I create my tiers and how I weight them and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that and you're on Substack, I'll be walking through all of that here in the next couple months, as we get closer to the NFL season. I'll do these things sort of a step at a time. And if you don't care, I'm doing it all, and you don't have to do any of it. So that's one thing that plays in. I wanted to show you that. Next thing is, this is pre-schedule. So I do a spreadsheet similar to this one that is in front of you right now. Once the schedule comes out, and I populate it with exactly what the schedule is, and that makes a big difference. I actually will get more confident about futures bets once the schedule is out and I can look at it in that way. However, just to show you here, my starting point is I look at games that I would expect a team to win, which to me means that they have a 70, 60, 65, 70% chance or better of winning. The yellow ones are ones where I think it's in the middle. So, maybe they'd be favored a little, the other team favored a little, but it's going to be close. And then the red games are ones that I would expect a team to lose. And I populate all of that, obviously taking into account home and away, taking into account strength of schedule, which I have on here. And then I have what I expect their wins, losses to be. And then the M for me is just middle, not win or loss. And that helps me to create a floor. So what do I think the worst this team would do is this year? The ceiling, which is what do I think the best this team would do is, and then a projection, where things stand right now and how I view these teams. What do I think is most likely to be the record of this team? I also have this column over here you'll see that says variability, and that helps me to know, and this gets more important, I think, as we actually get into the season and have the schedule, but this is something that gives me an indicator of how confident I am on my projection. So for instance, you can see down here, the variability for Chicago is 0.47. That's super high for me. And you can see right now I have their floor at 4 wins and their ceiling at 12. Are they going to win 12 games? Yeah, probably not. But are they going to win 4? Probably not. But again, what I'm trying to do here is just create what their likely range is. And then I have them projected at 7 and 10 right now. But if I have a team where their variability score is lower, like down here, is Miami, variability 0.235. Okay, that's half of what Chicago's is about. And so when I look and have them between 8 wins and 13, I'm a little more certain that they're going to fall in a narrower range. And that gives me more confidence around making certain kinds of futures bets like overs and unders for win totals and things like that. So this is just to show you another sheet here. And again, if you are on the Substack, you'll be able to look at this and even change the colors of these. You can use the system that I'm using, but change what you think the outcomes are. If you disagree with me, that's great. You might know better than I do. That's great. And I want to teach you how to do that if you want. And again, if you don't want to, then I'll be doing all of this and sharing what I'm doing and why, and you can tail that if you want to. So those are a couple of the tools that I use. I'm also going to be creating some tools around the impact of turnovers and the likelihood that turnovers are going to happen. Just a whole variety of data points drawing into this model to try to figure out the best futures bets to make and the way to build a portfolio. Where I want to spend a little bit of time here for this episode is on this sheet, which is a division by division look at my projections. Here I have May 2nd. It's May 4th now, and I actually updated these today. So I didn't update the heading to say May 4th, but I did update the projections because I did move a few teams around just with some news that's come out and some conversations that I've had lately. And I continue to do that and update things as I go. And again, at the end of this, I'm going to give you 5 bets that I've already made. I've made, I think, 8 bets total so far. So I'm going to give you over half of the bets that I've already made. And again, if you just want those, you can look down in the timestamps. But if you're interested in how I get there, then I'm going to walk through a little bit of this sheet and explain that to you. So first up, I bring over my projection for the team. So let's just look at Buffalo, projecting them to be 12-5. Then this is low and high. So this is that range that I expect them to be in. So I'm saying between 9 and 14 wins is where I expect Buffalo to be. The variability score, which I talked about before, which is obviously just kind of directly correlated to this range of their low and their high, but it just is a quicker way for me to be able to glance at it and kind of see where things are at. So 0.294, which is not too bad, fairly low for Buffalo. Then I have their strength of schedule, 96. I mean, and this isn't surprising. Anyone who follows the NFL would probably be fairly obvious that the divisions that are the best are going to have the most difficult strengths of schedule because they're playing each other 2 times. So the divisions that are deepest are likely to have the highest strength of schedule. But there's still something to be said here for looking within the division. Here, Buffalo, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, all their schedules are pretty close. I think it is interesting that New England's is actually, I have it rated as the strongest schedule, and that's actually the strongest schedule in the league for me. So you have the strength of schedule, and then I have their price to win the division currently. And I just pulled all of these off FanDuel. I do shop around much more. So during the season when I'm doing this, I'm going to be looking at, 7 or 8 books at least to see which ones are giving the best price. But for ease of use, I just pulled all of this from FanDuel today. So Buffalo at plus 130, plus 250 for the Jets, plus 290 for Miami, and then plus 750 for New England. I also put in here the implied probability of that line. So plus 130 for Buffalo is a 43.48% implied probability that they would win the AFC East. You can see the other percentages there. And then I also have what my probability is. These are things that I'll dial in more as we get closer to the season and into the season. But I am going off of these ranges that I've created for them, their strength of schedule, and then my projections for what their record will be. So right now I have 40% for Buffalo, 33 for the Jets, 25 for Miami, and 2% for New England. I have a number of teams where I am certainly lower than what the market says. And then I color-coded these last 2 columns, which if you are watching this video, you can see. Red means I would not bet this. So, for instance, New England's implied probability is 11.76. I have them at a 2% chance to win the division. Let me talk briefly about why, too. So I have New England projected at 7-10, but I have their range from 4 to 9. If you look up above at the ranges, I have 9 as Buffalo's floor. and I have 8 as the floor for the Jets and Miami. In other words, New England would have to have the best season that I'm projecting them for. All the other teams would have to have their worst season, and then Buffalo and New England would still tie. So it would go to tiebreakers. So for me, and these things certainly can and do change as we get into the season. We learn more about teams. We see teams that overachieve, underachieve what we're expecting. But for me right now, the chances of them winning this division from where I currently sit are so low that I put them at 2%. So for me, an 11.76% implied probability on the line that's being offered, and I have them at 2, that's something I don't want to bet. The yellow is bets I think you could consider making. So these are ones where I don't have a drastic difference between the implied probability and mine, but it's somewhat favorable. So an example there is the Jets. The implied probability at plus 250 is 28.57. And I have them at a 33% chance to win the AFC East. I really do think, I won't go into too much of the breakdown right now, but I do think that the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers playing even average Aaron Rodgers football, have a great team around him. They showed that last year. And so I think that they absolutely can challenge for the division. Also, though it's not a lot lower, I have them rated as the easiest strength of schedule in this division. So that's something that I like as well. So that's not a bet that I've made. Total transparency. That's not one of them. But this is the kind of thing I'm going to do all season. So if you're on the Substack and you want to come in and look at this tool that I'll make available to you, you can look and see kind of what things I'm interested in, what things I don't think are a good idea. And if you think the Jets are better than I do, and you're like, man, I think they have a 40% or a 45% chance of winning the division, cool, then that's probably a bet that you would want to make. And you can play with all of that as much as you want, but I will also give you my thoughts, and they'll be easy to see here. You won't even need to wait for me to put a video out. You can just come and look at kind of what I'm thinking as I update this. Let me give you an example of the green, though. So Jacksonville is currently minus 160 on FanDuel. I didn't go back and check. They were minus 150, and I'm trying to remember where that was. Might have been DraftKings, but there was a minus 150 out there, so this would actually be even better. But even at minus 160, that's a 61.54% implied probability to win the division. I have them at 76%. I think out of Houston, Indianapolis, Tennessee, I put them all in a similar boat. Basically, if everything breaks right and some of their players are better than expected, especially some of the young players, CJ Stroud for Houston, Richardson for Indianapolis, then maybe they could outpace where I have them projected, because I only have them projected for 7, 5, and 5 wins. So yeah, maybe they could outpace that. But I think they're going to struggle some because of that youth, and Jacksonville, I think, is ready to kind of take off. So I like that Jacksonville bet even at minus 160. It's not exactly what I bet. I may bet that yet. I haven't decided, but I think it's certainly one where my probabilities would say that's very favorable. So that's the way that this spreadsheet breaks down. And as you can look down here, I mean, I'll just point out the bets that look good to me at the moment are, for division winners, are Philadelphia. I have them at 60% to win the division versus 47.62 implied probability at plus 110. There was a plus 115 out there yesterday. You could go look for that. This is something I did bet. I actually got it at plus 105. So you could do better than what I did if you go get on that plus 110. Atlanta to win the division is at plus 260. The reason that I haven't pulled the trigger on this one is yesterday it was at I guess it's 2 days ago now. It was at plus 325. And I really wish I would have jumped on that when it was there, but I was taking my time too much. This still to me looks like a good bet. I think I'm going to wait for the schedule to come out, though. And if you want to wait with me and wait for the video about that, then I will explain how the schedule will affect the way that I'm going to approach this bet. I'm hoping that that line won't fall too much more before the schedule comes out, which I believe is I think it's next Thursday, so in about a week. And then as we move down, I just have one other green bet, and that is Seattle to win the division at plus 260. I give them a 48% chance to win the division. maybe I'm a little too high on Seattle. I'm open to that case being made, but I really like what they did in the offseason. And I think San Francisco kind of stood pat, and San Francisco was really good. I have them at 51%. So maybe that needs to be bumped a little bit, but this is a massive discrepancy for me. And I will share in a minute why I have not bet them to win the division yet, but I have made a bet on the Seahawks. All right. That wraps up for now kind of some of the tools that I'll be using. Again, I'm going to be adding turnover stuff. I'm going to be adding projections to make the playoffs, not make the playoffs. I'm going to be talking about different parlays that you can put together of some division winners as we go, how to create a portfolio based on what you've already bet, all these kind of things. So there's a lot more, but this is what I wanted to share with you for tonight. So with that said, let me come back on the screen here and share with you a few bets that I like. So I already shared one, which is the Philadelphia Eagles plus 105 or 110 or 115, if you can find it, to win the NFC East. Philadelphia, and I say, if you watch the show that I did with Yanni and D Nice that was out earlier today on the YouTube channel and Twitter at Big Tasty Sports, talked about this with them. Philadelphia was tied for the best team in the league last year, in my mind, even though they had sort of an easy schedule. They lost a couple pieces, but they restocked. They got DeAndre Swift, which I like because they won't have to overuse him, and I think he's talented. This is a team that, if anything, to me, got younger, and in the long run, that probably makes them better. I think overall the NFC potentially got worse, and I definitely think the NFC East did not keep pace with Philadelphia. I think all the teams in that division did some decent things and should be okay. But I think this is certainly Philadelphia's division to lose. You saw my projections earlier with the percentages. I just like them a lot. So Philadelphia to win the division, plus 105 or better. If you can get it, I like that at anything that is plus money. Now I want to give you 4 win total bets that I have already made. And I have a few more than this, but I'm going to share 4. Actually, I think I might throw in a bonus one because I kind of want to make a point about one other angle that I use when I'm looking at these futures, and it comes into play more and more the further we go along into the season. But first up is Atlanta over 8 wins at minus 115. BetUS, BetOnline. There may be other places that have it, but those are the 2 that I saw that have that minus 115 line on 8 over 8. FanDuel has it at over 8.5. DK has plus 110 at over 8.5. I certainly prefer the 8 if you can get it. I like having that possibility of a push. Couple things I'll tell you about Atlanta. I have them ranked as the easiest strength of schedule in the entire league this year, and I have them, I think, 4 points easier than the next closest team. They're playing in a bad division. I think they got a lot better with their offseason moves. I think they are going to be phenomenal running the ball. I think that they have nice weapons throwing the ball as well. They got some defensive pieces and some veterans to come in to shore up the defense a little. And in their division, I just don't think they're going to have to be phenomenal. I don't like Atlanta as a team to potentially win the NFC or win the Super Bowl, but I do like their chances of winning this division. And even if they don't, to get to 9 wins, I really like. So minus 115 on Atlanta over 8. The next one is another team that I am very high on this year, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. I have over 9.5 at minus 115. That was on BetUS. FanDuel is already hanging 10.5 at plus 104. I am okay with that, though I definitely prefer the 9.5. They do play in a very tough division, and that's something that you have to consider. Even the teams in that division that are likely to be less good. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a very good offseason, and they were very respectable last year, more than I thought they would be. And then the Cleveland Browns made some nice moves as well. They have to prove to me that they can be a decent team. I don't really believe in Deshaun Watson. We'll see, though. Could prove me wrong, but that's a pretty good division. So you want to be a little careful, but Baltimore has just put together some phenomenal offensive weapons now. Not going to belabor it. Talked about this at length with Yanni and D on the show that I already referenced. You can go check that out again on the YouTube channel or on Twitter. You can find that video link. So I like Baltimore to get to 12 or 13 wins, actually. And right now, if I'm making futures bets, I want at least a couple games of clearance between my projection and the line that I'm getting. So I have to get 10 wins, and I like them for 12 or 13. So that to me is a good bet that to jump on now and not wait. So minus 115 Baltimore over 9.5. That's the next one that I've added. Oh, one other thing that I will be doing, I don't have it pulled up right now. Otherwise, I would just share it with you, but I don't have it in front of me. I don't bet all of these things at the same amount of units either. Some of that is dependent on the line, but some of that is dependent on what I think is going to happen during the season and whether I think I'll be able to add to a position or not. And I become more clear about that once the schedule is out. So I think the biggest bet that I've made so far is 4 units. And I do bet more on futures. I mean, this is just another thing of you're investing money for a long period of time. And that could, I mean, if you want your money back quick, that is definitely a downside of futures betting is you're tying up your money through the season. So certainly something to consider. For me, it was just like, hey, 46% ROI last year. If I have to tie up money for, 8 months or whatever to get a 46% return, great. Honestly, if it's like a 15% return, I'm okay with that. So anyway, that's how I approach it, but you have to decide how you want to approach that. But if you can, I bet a little bit more on futures because of that long-term nature. I want a bigger payout at the end than a regular bet would be for me. All right, the next one is the Rams under 7.5 wins. This is juiced. It's minus 140 at BetUS. But I just feel like I'm buying myself a little bit of insurance. You can get under 6.5 at minus 115. And honestly, I'm fine with that. I have the Rams winning 2 or 3 games this year. I think Stafford, Cup, one of them gets hurt or isn't playing well. That's just game over. So I don't expect a lot out of the Rams this year, but 7 games. I mean, can they win 7 games? I really don't think so. But now you got to get to 8. You have to be almost 500 with what I think is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. That seems like a really strong bet to me. So I'm willing to lay the juice minus 140. I think I did. My units right now also are $50. I'm not trying to hide that either. I'm not the highest of rollers at this point, but a decent amount of money for me. So I think I did 140 to win 100 so far, and that's something I'll look to add more in the future. And then the fourth one is Seattle over 8.5 wins, minus 125 at BetUS. It's also at Bet Online. I think it's only minus 132 on FanDuel. That's not terrible still. I love what Seattle did in the offseason. You saw when I was showing you my spreadsheet, if you were with me for that part, that I only have them a few percentage points behind San Francisco to potentially win this division. I have them at 11 or 12 wins. They only need to get to 9 for me to win this bet. So I will lay the minus 125. And I believe I did 250 to win 200 on Seattle so far, and I will look to add on them as well, most likely. All right, the last one I want to talk about, kind of one bonus bet here. Okay, so this is a team I try to take emotions out of my betting, right? And I'm a Vikings fan. I make no, I mean, end of last year, I probably would have wanted to hide that, but I don't hide it. It is what it is. And because of that, I am definitely not a Packers fan. I despise the Packers. I would be happy for them to come in last in the NFC North, which they never do. And so I want to take emotion out. I have Green Bay winning 4 games this year. Maybe that's too low. That is definitely a possibility. When I was talking to Yanni and D, I think they're higher on the Packers than I am. And so I am open to the possibility that I have some emotion seeping in here, and I have to be careful of that. Well, right now, the Packers their win total is under 7.5. So for me, I'm like, hey, I have them at 4 wins. I mean, that would be a no-brainer. But after listening to some people that I respect, it's like, okay, you've got them closer to. Yanni said he thinks that's spot on, the 7.5, that they win 7 or 8 games. Definitely respect his opinion on this stuff, and so I want to be careful about betting it. But I did place a 1 unit bet on it, and here's the reason that I ended up doing it. This is another thing that I'm looking for when I am doing my work on futures throughout the season, is BetUS minus 140 under 7.5, BetOnline minus 150, DraftKings minus 150. And I did not check this right before I recorded, so I hope this is still true. I checked it earlier today. FanDuel plus 104. Ooh, that is a massive difference from 140 being the next best price to plus 104. When I see a line that is that far out of line with the rest of the market, that's almost an auto bet for me, because I do believe that the market knows what it's talking about. Vegas knows what it's talking about. I don't think I'm always sharper than Vegas. I mean, probably a lot of the time not. So I pay attention to the lines that they post. And when something's an outlier, unless I have a really good reason not to bet it, I'm going to bet something on it. So Green Bay under 7.5 plus 104 for 1 unit. I went ahead and took that. All right, that is it for the NFL Futures Report for May 4th. Hopefully this gives you a good sense of the kind of tools and content you'll be getting. Also, if you do subscribe on Substack, I'm going to be doing some chats there at times. You can always reach out to me. Honestly, I mean, reach out to me on Twitter too. You don't have to sign up for Substack to reach out to me, but I'm happy to answer any questions or help you as you're trying to build out a futures portfolio this year. I would love to see a lot of people be successful doing that, and I think that it is a market where it can be done. Hopefully that will be right again this year. Thanks, everybody, for listening in to this first episode, and I will talk to you again soon.